Okay, welcome everybody. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 1 and 3 on today's agenda. For the items listed above, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board if Council does not adopt an amendment within 120 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 180 days for an official plan amendment. And as I'm sure you're all aware, since you're all sitting here, and some of you have been here before, there's a comment sheet that's available at the door for anyone wishing to submit written comments or is for somebody that wants to speak. Any declarations of interest? None? Confirmation, you have interest? Confirmation of minutes? Councillor Leeper was saying he hasn't had a day off in 3 weeks, and it's starting to show early in the planning committee. So nothing so carried on the confirmation of the minutes from April the 25th? Yeah, carried. Then we have communications. We have a response to inquiries, CC 0216 bird-friendly development guidelines. Is that, we don't even have to receive it, I don't think. Postponements and deferrals. We have, again, before us the zoning bylaw amendment, part of 980 Earl Armstrong Road. And we do have Ms. Jarvis is here. If anyone has any questions on this item, does anyone have any questions? Well, we're ready to go with this one now. Ms. Jarvis, do you need to speak if they're ready to carry it? Okay, thank you. So on the zoning bylaw amendment for part of 980 Earl Armstrong Road, is that carried? Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience on this one. We also have a motion to send this one to council tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Therefore, it be resolved that report in front of us, zoning bylaw amendment, part of 980 Earl Armstrong Road, proceed to City Council on May 11, 2016 for consideration.
Carried. Thank you. I see May 11th. I see May 11th there, in the gray part.
Oh, you know what it is? Councillor Cloutier is correct in the top part in the whereas, but the important part, which is the legislative component that I'm aware of, at the bottom it says May 11th. Okay. Carried? Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is Leitrim and related stormwater matters. Anyone have any questions? Is it carried? Thank you. Item number 3 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 283 Sussex Avenue. We do have speakers, so we'll hold that one. Number 4 is the status update planning committee inquiries and motions for the period ending 29 April 2016. Anybody questions? Is it carried? Is it received?
Received.
Thank you. Vacant urban residential land survey is number 5, 2015 update. We're asking to receive this. Good information. Thank you, Mr. Cross, if you're in the room.
Nice looking report.
Councillor Cloutier said it's a nice looking report. Inventory of vacant industrial and business park land update is item number 6, and we're asking to receive that. And that, of course, may be impacted by the employment land review, which will be coming to Planning Committee in September, we're hoping. Is that received? The annual development report. If you had a chance to look at that question. Okay, we'll hold that. And we'll hold number 8 because Mr. Mizzi is going to do a very unique presentation, first of its kind. So last week we had the first webinar, which is unbelievable. I'm even saying we had the first webinar because obviously, but you would think that would have happened before. But now we have a very kind of unique presentation. It's going to be, he's going to be speaking, but you need to watch the screen for it because he won't be speaking to the screen, and you're going to like it.
Sorry, it was item 8 that I had the question on, not 7.
So we'll hold that one, and we'll, is item number 7, which is the annual development report 2015. Is that received? Received? Okay, thank you. Okay, and then We did promise an update on Bill 73, the further to the meeting that Marika Clark attended. There really isn't anything new that came out of that. So there's just like a minor thing, and so with information on a website, that sort of thing. So Mr. Mizzi is either going to just speak on it for a minute now, or he'll just send out a brief note on it to everybody. What would you prefer? Note is fine? Okay? All right, so you'll get that in the next few days. But clearly there's nothing for us to actually have, be engaged in at this point still. Strange. All right, now we'll go back to 283 Sussex, Avenue Zoning Bylaw Amendment. The Planning Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to Zoning Bylaw 2008-250 for 283 Sussex Drive to permit an office use and to amend the vehicle parking provisions as detailed in Document 2. We do have speakers, as I said, and now before us we see Ms. Kimberly Baldwin and Mr. Doug James and Mr. Don Herwire. Pardon me, we're not doing a presentation, but I'm going to ask the Catherine McDonald and Jean-Pierre Kingsley to come forward. Doug, you're going to have to slide over or something. Ms. Jarvis, can you just hang on a minute, because I think that, just hang on a minute. Don't leave. All right? Thank you very much. If you'd just like to put the mic on, there you go, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Catherine McDonald. I'm a member of the Board of Directors for Carleton CCC number 151 Condominium Corporation on Bottler Street, near the location of the proposed building. We received notice of this application as members of the Condo Corporation and filed an objection. I'm going to speak on a little more broad issue, and then my colleague will follow with some more substantive points. Governments are expected to act in good faith and in the public interest when passing bylaws. They're expected to provide information to the public as to whom and what is affected by the proposed change. This principle of transparency and full disclosure also applies to bylaw amendments, including the zoning bylaw amendment before the committee today. The zoning bylaw amendment proposal summary in this application is seriously flawed. The summary states that the application is to add an office use to the site with a reduction in required parking to 0. The summary notes that existing zoning does not permit office use on the site, but at no time does the summary address the fact that under normal circumstances, zonings would require 7 parking spaces, not 2. By omitting this crucial piece of information, the summary leads the reader to conclude that the current requirement is for 2 parking spaces only, not 7 as required in the bylaw. I think that this planning committee should require the summaries going out for proposed amendments to be complete, transparent, contain all relevant information, including what variations to zoning have been permitted in the past. Because it seems to me if this building would have been required to have 7 parking spaces, at some time there must have been a variation to allow them to reduce that to 2. And that should have been included in that summary. We didn't find that out until the final report came back to council, or to this committee. Now I'd like to turn over to my colleague, Jean-Pierre Kingsley.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente, Messieurs les conseillers. It's a pleasure and much appreciated to have this opportunity to speak to you. More to follow upon and to give more detail based on what my colleague has just presented. Even the last summary talks about the fact that the proposed rezoning affects a building on the edge of heritage designation. It doesn't say that it's inside the heritage designation. It should say that, and that has weight. Is it or is it not? And the fact that it's the NCC seeking a change should be very evident to people as well, because they, more than anybody, should be seeking to respect heritage designations. There's got to be major reasons why we would allow non-respect of that designation, beyond the fact that it's to accommodate the NCC in something relating to the rental of property, to a lawyer's office. And the fact that it's a lawyer's office is not a contention here, whatever that lawyer is, whoever that lawyer is. The other thing, too, is that for all intents and purposes, there is no parking available there. Cathcart Street is a one-way from Sussex, and it's occupied by parking for people who work or visit Sainte-Elisabeth-Bruyère. Okay, so there's no parking there that's really available. Bolton, we just had the addition of an apartment building at the corner of Parent and Bolton. Claude Lauzon built the building there. No one has moved in yet. There's 23 units that are going to be there. The parking inside the building is less than 23. I forget what it is. It's 11 parking spots. Where are the visitors going to be? And so why is this being done without knowing? Now, we were asked, do you agree with 3 as opposed to the 0 that was initially there? We don't know if we agree with 3 because we don't know how many people are going to work in that lawyer's office. We don't know how many visitors they will have all the time. It could be that 2 would suffice. It may be that 7 is required, which is what the bylaw says. I suppose my last comment is going to be with the fact that, to build upon the fact that this has not been a very transparent process. The construction is finished. They finished the construction for office use. If you walk at the corner of Cathcart and Sussex, you see that, for all intents and purposes, there's just a little bit of work left to do. So before anybody, before all this very process
I have to ask you to wrap up because I've given you, because there's 2 of you, a little bit extra time. If you could wrap up, please. And then, based on your questions that you had brought up, we'll go to staff and ask them to make comments.
Very good. This was the wrap-up. If an ordinary citizen had built in anticipation of a change in bylaw, before the bylaw was changed, what would have been the reaction of City Council? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff, have you, who's going to speak to some of the issues that they raised?
Madam Chair, we have spoken to the delegation and clarified some of the aspects that they had questions on as the process was ongoing. Through the process, the applicant has revised their parking from 0 to 3 parking spaces that they are now proposed to provide. Maybe to the committee's interest that if the application was across the street, the parking requirement would be 3 spaces because the parking rate changes across the street from Sussex Drive, so it's right along the boundary of the parking rate changes. For this reason, the department felt it was a reasonable request to seek 3 parking spaces for this proposed office use.
And before I go to my colleagues around the table to ask them if they have any questions, do you have any questions so far? Okay. So therefore, I just have another question. The comment that this was maybe getting special favor because it's an NCC application, does that at any time factor into your decision?
Madam Chair, no, absolutely not. The process is the same for any applicant.
Okay. No, but no questions for the delegations? You do for that? Okay. So a question for the delegation, Councillor Brockington?
I'm just trying to understand how this impacts the day-to-day life of the residents you represent. You're from a condo corporation. I assume you're on the board. How does this impact them?
Part of the impact, of course, is that there will be more traffic. Second impact is that people are driving around looking for parking. And there will be additional parking requirements just at the corner of Para and Bolton, which is just across the street from our unit. From our units, it's just across the street. We're at the corner of Bottler, Para, and Bolton. And Bolton is our backyard, so it's all impacted. You try to park anywhere around there during the daytime, it's not possible. People are forever seeking parking spots. That's what's going to happen.
So I have a follow-up to staff, Madam Chair, based on that answer.
And then just hang on to that because, well, actually, then go ahead and ask staff because then you may want to go back to their, Councillor Tierney who has a question of the delegation as well.
Okay. So I think that's a fair comment that our delegation has made. What is sort of the happy medium or happy balance in this case? This is a congested and built-up area. Do we know the type of law firm? Is this a fair question to ask publicly about who the tenant may be and the type of expected volume of visitors or traffic that this office might generate to determine whether or not there's sufficient parking space for this office?
Okay, so it's an existing business that's moving around the corner down the street, and I thought I saw in the report that currently they have no dedicated spaces. Is that true?
Madam Chair, that's correct. The office business that's proposed to be relocated here is currently along Sussex, closer to the market, where they have no dedicated parking.
Okay. Councillor, Vice Chair Tierney?
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kingsley, you mentioned you weren't informed or there was questions about being informed. How did you find out about this coming today?
It was the substance of the information that we were contesting. We did receive by mail the notice, which, as Catherine explained, was really flawed in terms of the substance of the information that was provided, where we were not told that there were supposed to be 7 parking spots initially. We were just told it was going to be reduced to 0. And that they anticipated 2. So the number 2 was used, but not the number 7. So it really was hard for us to find out what this was all about, sir.
So thank you for that. So just to staff, do we follow our standard procedures? Do we have the board out front? Is this posted on our website? Do we do all the things that we usually do for the rest of the general public?
Chair, yes, the standard procedures were followed in this instance, as required by the Planning Act. A sign was posted on the property. All properties within 120 meters were circulated, and notice was provided to all those that had commented on the application and were advised of the meeting today.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cloutier.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Just wanted to know further to Mr. Kingsley's comment, how was a building permit issued without proper zoning if the construction on this has been almost completed?
Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is that there was certain structural work that had to be done regardless of the tenant fit-up in the building, but there was no building permits issued specific to the office use. So there was some work that was able to proceed that had to occur, whether it was an office or a residential use, and that's what the permit was limited to.
And was a building permit issued for that work, for that structural
That's
work?
my understanding.
So the builder or the owner is compliant?
Yes, I'm sure the NCC could speak to that as well, but that is my understanding.
The NCC, Bill Leonard is here to for questions if you have any.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Monsieur Kingsley and Ms. McDonald. Thank you very much for coming out today. So I would, does anyone have any questions of Mr. Leonard? He is the NCC Director of Real Estate. Where are you, Mr. Leonard? There you are. come forward just in case. Thank you. Welcome. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for coming out today. Does anyone have any questions for the NCC on the move of the law office from their current property to this property, which is part of the proposal? No? Well, thank you very much. Thanks for walking down. Thank you. It's a more difficult walk back up. Thank you. Okay, anybody have anything to say on committee, questions, whatever? Okay, so is the item carried then? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, staff.
Madam Chair, I also have a motion. Originally, it was supposed to be for the May 25th Council, very similar to the previous motion. Therefore, it be resolved that this report related to 283 Sussex Drive proceed to City Council on May 11th, 2016 for consideration.
Carried.
What's the explanation?
2017.
Madam Chair, because we have a process, there should be a
Yes,
reason.
we do, and there is in that. He just didn't read the whole thing, which he rarely does.
I'll read the complete motion, Councillor Shirelli. Whereas the report, zoning bylaw amendment 283 Sussex Drive, is to be considered by City Council on May 25th, and whereas the owner of the National Capital Commission needs to relocate the office tenant from 449 Sussex Drive to 283 Sussex Drive as soon as possible to ensure the completion of the redevelopment of 449 Sussex Drive prior to the 2017 celebrations. Satisfied? All right, good. Thank you.
Because the 2017 is one of the 4 criteria that we can use. And if you recall 7 Clarence Street and all that's to happen there, that is going to be quite the unique place during Canada's 150th birthday. Okay, thank you. So on the going to council tomorrow, is that carried? Thank you. So on number 8, 2015 Planning and Growth Management Department year-end report, as I said, we really want you to put your eyes to the screen, and you're going to see something, I think, that's very interesting, very unique, and I'm sure all of you are going to want to use it. The soundtrack is Mr. Mizzy, but you can hum if you want.
Oops. Are we ready? Ready, Esther? Yep. Good morning. I'm going to share with you some of the highlights from the department's 2015 annual report using a new story map that we created in-house working with each of our branches. We wanted to create something innovative this year that reached a wider audience. As I speak and you watch the screen, my colleagues Esther Perron and Geraldine Wildman next to me will scroll through the annual report. Last year, Development Review Services reviewed over 1,200 different planning applications, conducted thousands of inspections, and issued many rural community grants. This heat map was created to illustrate where the concentration of development is happening in our city. This is a virtual video of the roundabout at Brian Colburn and Portobello, which was one of the major road modifications designed by Development Review Services staff. We had many major developments approved in 2015 that will shape the city for years to come, including Oblates, Zibi, and the Hazeldean subdivision. A number of major projects recognizing the heritage value of different neighborhoods were also completed last year. This map lets you navigate through the different heritage conservation districts throughout the city. The Transportation Planning Branch had some of their most impactful projects constructed last year. The branch also won the National Clean 50 Award. Cycling improvements was another achievement for this branch. The Clegg intersection design is one of the first of its kind in North America. Our Business Services branch improved our outreach to the public with over 5,000 people attending consultations. We also redesigned our circulation packages to make them easier to understand. The Building Code Services branch issued over 9,000 different types of permits and conducted over 90,000 inspections last year. For the very first time, we've mapped our open data to show the concentration of building permits throughout the city, making it easier for everyone to find out building permit information. The Policy Development and Urban Design branch completed 5 CDPs for growing communities and tendered over $53 million for infrastructure projects. This interactive map was created to showcase the 2015 Urban Design Awards. We also used some in-house talent for one of our zoning projects to create the city's most watched video, another way that we are engaging the community and setting new precedents. I encourage everyone to take time and visit our annual report on ottawa.ca. Tools like these not only help to showcase our accomplishments with a wider audience, but also remind us all to build on these successes and plan the best city possible. On behalf of the department, we look forward to working with everyone here today on a successful 2016. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mizzi, and thank you, staff, that helped pull this together. And I liked it very much. It's just for your information, we're going to add it to the banner on the city's website, main website. I think Mr. Dare said later this afternoon and tomorrow, and have it up there so that people can access it. I think that it's something that you will really like to use with your community associations. It's another one of those things that we're doing, engaging and communicating with and connecting with our community associations and residents across the city. It's another tool that they have, which will be way easier to understand and to use. And hopefully, in areas where we don't traditionally have a lot of people that are engaged, we'll be able to get involved. Often we have in the suburbs, we have subdivisions, plans and that nobody comments on because nobody lives there. And then as time goes on and things come to play, you go, wait a minute, how did that happen, and that sort of thing. So I think it will be an opportunity for people to get connected. And as you know, last week we had our first Building Better Connections forum here, which was very well attended and had a lot of people using the webinar. And it's just a different way of reaching out to the people in our city. So any questions? I guess you do. Councillor Hubley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last year when this report came forward, I had asked the question about the standards. Should these standards be changed? Because we're clearly not even getting close to meeting them. I look at the target for site plan control for manager delegated with public consultation, and we're only meeting the target 33% of the time. I noticed that we meet it 64% of the time if it's delegated to staff, and they even have a shorter time frame. So I'm just wondering, what's the changes that Mr. Mitzi will implement this year so that we're not back here next year looking at the same kind of result here?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councillor, you did raise this issue last year, and while those statistics look low, relatively speaking, there's been an improvement over the last 3 years in almost all our categories. We have actually improved the timelines. But structurally, there is a problem with these timelines. They were created 15 years ago, and the world of planning processing has changed dramatically in those 15 years. For example, we have new legislative requirements that require us to circulate our plans more broadly and to more contact points. There's an urban design review panel that adds time to the process, but it also adds a qualitative element to our planning review. And the nature of community consultation has changed. My suggestion is that the timeline targets do need to be amended to be more reflective of realistic targets in the year 2016.
So is that, are you saying that you're going to do that? Like, we're all recognizing that that's the problem. We all recognize that was the problem last year. I'm not seeing what's been done from last year to this year to make a difference. I'll grant it, you're showing a 4% improvement. You've increased from 29% to 33%. Congratulations, but there's a long way to go. When you refer to the changes that have taken place over the last 15 years that affect these timelines, you can also now do your circulation by email instead of by snail mail. So that should help. We can do public consultation over websites and use social media to do that. That should be helping you with your timelines. So I'm wondering when the committee will see a package that's going to see us either reach these standards or else the committee look at the standards and change them.
Madam Chair, we have actually done an assessment of the timeline targets comparing the last few years. Certainly, I'm quite prepared to bring back that information to this committee if the committee wishes. Like I said, our suggestion is that we do give some consideration to a revised timeline target, which is more reflective of today's reality. You quote a number of ways that we could improve the process, and we are moving down that path of more electronic or computer or web-based approaches to dealing with our processing. There are different ways to outreach. As the chair mentioned last week, we had our first webinar. Nonetheless, overall, the process is still lengthier than it was 15 years ago because of newer requirements. Second, I should add, is that the nature of applications has changed over the years. In last year in particular, the level of complexity and the size of individual applications has changed. Think of the Oblates project. Think of Rockcliffe Canada Forces Base. Think of Zibi. We will soon get LeBreton. These are very big, complex projects that aren't easily processed within the timeline targets that were set 15 years ago.
Okay. And so maybe, Madam Chair, this fall we can put this on the agenda to take a look at it for next year.
Sure. Sure.
If I may have some more questions. One of the parts that I've personally experienced and hearing from other councillors, it can be an issue, certainly different results across the city, so it tells me there's something within the department that's taking place here, is like you have X number of days for the planners to review the files and so on, but we don't have any timelines for engineering review. And for many, it's considered a black hole when it goes into engineering review. Now, when I've talked to staff, I'll often hear that they're getting incomplete applications. But we should be able to identify an incomplete application right up front and send it back. Why are we taking weeks and months to go back to people and say this is incomplete? So I'm wondering if that's an area that you could look at this process that may actually help speed it up. If it's the result of incomplete applications, there should be steps we could take. If it's a result because of our processes, I would hope that there's things we could do to improve those processes, because I can give you examples of things being tied up for 6 months over a little valve. Yeah, we all have them, right, Madam Chair? Yeah. So, I won't, I hope we all don't dump on Mr. Misty today with those examples, but they're available for you offline, and it's things that you can look at that I think would provide you good opportunities to improve these timelines. So I'll leave that with you to look at then the engineering review. My last question for you is, at the end of this report, you talked about the street name project and the results to date on the street name. I think it's 30-some changes. There was a motion, I believe it was at the end of the last term of council, where we said, since amalgamation, this has been going on. We do a handful of streets every year. And we did a motion that was unanimously approved that staff were to go away and come up with a plan on how they were going to, within a year, get all the names done that needed to be done.
Oh, the streets.
Now, at that time, we were told there was 1,500 streets to be done. It's 2 years later, and we're only at 30 done, and most of those were in my area, because I offered to be the first on this so that they could test the processes. But to me, we're not living up to what that motion asked staff to do. So I'd like to hear from you what's going on with the other 1,400. Why aren't they before us, and why aren't they fixed?
Madam Chair, yes, that process has been a relatively painful process. It's taking more time than was originally expected to change address names. It's something that communities hold dear. Changing a name, street name, is something that is a very difficult process to do. It involves extensive back and forth with the ward councillor, with the community.
Mr. Mitzi, with all due respect, we went through that. That's why we did the motion. Staff agreed that they could come up with a process. They did come up with a process. I went through the experience. We got through it. It's really for community safety. It's for emergency services that we're trying to do away with these duplications. So let's not sugarcoat this. There was a direct motion. Staff have not done what's in the motion. I'd like to know why not, and what's the steps going to be taken to implement that motion. Because if you're not going to change the other 1,400 names, I'm changing mine back. Okay?
Yeah, and just before, because you don't have the history that around this table.
Well, somebody has the history. We did a motion and went away with it.
Councillor Shirelli and I can tell you that the very first term that we started doing this, it was absolute chaos, and it was very, I think, the most volatile meetings we had. I remember Sunset. Remember Sunset? Yeah, Sunset in the Glebe, going down to Dow's Lake, and Sunset, yeah, but it was Sunset something else. It's the same, it's a two-word thing. Anyway, it was ridiculous. We must have had 65 people out. So we did a lot of that. Then what started happening is we can't just totally blame staff at all. I know Frank's here. Frank, you may want to come over and chime in a bit. We cannot, because in some cases it's the councillors, because they know that the impact they're going to have in their areas, and they just don't want to have to deal with it. But then there's a mix of it too, because, for example, in my area, I have on the major arterial road, which is Strandherd, I have 2 Jockvale, which is a major road at Strandherd, 2 of them. So from emergency services, that was a problem. I said, hello, this has got to be changed. Now, that road opened, and I think maybe it wasn't on the radar. It's going to come out where the Costco is going in at Strandherd, and what will be called Helene Campbell Avenue, after Helene Campbell. It's near to where Helene grew up, and she's a Barrhaven girl. So that's going to happen this month, I think May 20th or something. Very pleased about that. But that's part of the problem, too. I have another one that's got to change because we have 5 cedar views. So what I'm saying is
Madam Chair, we did the motion. Do you want to undo the motion, or what do we want to do?
Then, sometimes it's our colleagues that are in the way as well. But, Frank, did you have anything to ask about, to respond to about...
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's no question that it's taken considerable longer time than we had originally anticipated. My presence on this project commenced in 2015, and that's pretty much when I believe an information report was submitted to committee, probably later in 2014. And no question, there's been about 26 or so completed, street names that have been completed. However, there's about 70 in production and processing, and it does take months, over several months to do. There are 150 names that we're looking at changing, and in some cases the changes are fairly quick. In other cases, it does take an exceedingly long period of time because of the amount of consultation that we have to undertake. We are proceeding as quickly as we can, and we hope to be completed
probably within Q1 of 2017. It's just the timing of it all. There's no question. It is a very long process.
I think we took a bit of a holiday, too, because the backlash was so, and I think Councillor Chiarelli is going to mention one in his area, but the backlash was so extreme that it was, it wasn't, at a time when we were trying very hard to build a new city, post-amalgamation, we were actually pitting communities where everybody had a main street, right? Everybody had a main street, so then we tried to get creative with that. So you're telling Councillor Hubley and the rest of us that you're going to have that inventory is going to be completed by January 2017?
I can't guarantee it'll be January. It'll be sometime in Q1 of 2017. So I'm hoping before the end of March of 2017, correct.
How many more are there left to do?
Of 150, we'll probably still have about another 45 that we still have yet to commence to proceed on.
So it's 150, not 1,500 is what's left. Okay, I put a zero on the end. My apologies. I'll change that. But I thought, if I understood correctly, and it was Arlene Gregoire before Mr. Biden that came and presented to us, the idea was that we were going to be able to do this online, that you were developing something on the website so that folks could see all their streets. We were offering up, like I know the experience we had in our area, if people didn't have a street name that they wanted to change it to, we made some suggestions and people picked from those. And it went, there was glitches, but it went relatively smoothly. Like I thought your staff were very helpful in implementing that. And that's why I'm not understanding why it's not done yet. And it was in response to the experiences that the chair and Councillor Chiarelli experienced and others that Councillor El-Shantiri is one that comes to mind for the West End that had quite a difficult time with one of the streets. But it was because of that that your staff went away and developed that. So that's what I'm asking. So if you're saying Q1 of 2017, I'm good with that. It tells me that you've got a plan. Okay? Thank you.
Good questions, thank you.
Just don't be here next year telling me that there's 45 left. That's all I ask.
Because now it's Q2. And this will go onto our inquiry sheet for updates too. So the one that we just received earlier at the meeting where we have the, where we bring it forward, the council inquiries and directions. Okay, we'll have that added. Councillor Chiarelli.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, my ward had one of the most celebrated attempted street name changes and ultimate street name changes. We had almost 2,000 people protesting and signing documents to try to stop it, claiming that there really was no reason to not have duplicate street names, and ascribing all sorts of criminal intent to just about everything. So, but one thing I did see staff do, that was Robertson Road. Okay. One thing I did see staff do through the course of this, we had a plan all nicely laid out, but that doesn't mean the public is going to operate under that plan. And we may have said, okay, here are a bunch of names, pick them online, pick them off the list, and assign your preference to your street. When they say, no, I'm not doing that, and instead I'm picking a name that actually isn't even on the list, but would make an additional duplicate street name because it's already somewhere else in the city. And then they show up at Mr. Biden's office and demand all sorts of things change. I think staff have done a good job to keep those tempers at least somewhat at abeyance and move us forward a bit. In my ward, we have Rutherford Street, of which there are 4 others. So we have 5 Rutherford Streets, and convincing certain people that 5 is too many was, pretty difficult in some cases. And then it moved to, well, my Rutherford Street is more important than the other 4, so they should all change. And the public simply refusing to buy into the criteria that were were determined at the start of the process. So I've seen, because my ward office is at Ben Franklin Place, where people will come in and they'll be incensed, people saying, I know the street name selected was, for example, Gladiola, but we want Knight Rider, okay? And just the lack of understanding of the process and the insistence that people get their way on some of these things, and the disregard for the reason for doing it. I think Mr. Bidden and his staff have really shown some intestinal fortitude to deal with it over the last year, and I'm confident we will get through the rest of them. And I am happy, though, that in the bit of a delay that we've had, we've been able to bring in the Trailblazing Women project, so that we now have an opportunity to commemorate a number.
What are you talking about?
We're commemorating a number of women, trailblazing women in the city of Ottawa on these streets.
You were going to call one of the streets Trailblazing Women.
No, sorry. No. So like Elsie McGill,
See how we get crazy sometimes, when we have like an agenda that goes quickly? Then we get kind of like absorbed in some topics.
Alison Corrin, Elsie McGill, people who never would have been commemorated, now have an opportunity to be commemorated.
Now you know where she lives, say Alison Corrin?
Where?
Barhaven, just saying.
Okay, we're still doing it. Thanks.
Public consultation at its best. Are you finished? Thank you. Because I think if I let him go, like we're going to go sideways. Councillor Nussbaum?
Chair, I'm moving off name changes and streets. Is that okay? Yeah.
Pardon? What did you say?
I'm changing topics.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to acknowledge, because we ended up not holding item 7, which was the annual development report, and I just wanted to acknowledge, because we haven't had a chance to talk about it, and thank the staff who worked on it. It's a very useful document. It goes through all sorts of interesting demographics and patterns in the city, and although we didn't stop and there wasn't a presentation on it, I do want to take a brief moment to thank all the staff who worked on it. That kind of information is extremely helpful, so even though we didn't hold it and talk about it, I always look forward to seeing that every year, so thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And you're right. That is a lot of information. And Mr. Cross, is where sometimes carries a cross on this stuff, and we're not always easy with him, but we appreciate the work that you do. We have some information coming forward that staff have asked him to pull, so we can see how we're doing with our previously approved transit-oriented development stations, areas, to see how growth is happening there. So we'll be looking for that information. Anybody have anything else? Well, anyway, thank you very much, staff. Is this item received? Okay, thank you. All right. Any notices of motion? What's that one? Oh, yes, I forgot. Hang on a second. So there is, Vice Chair Tierney has a motion with regard to an FCM conference that is in, well, he'll introduce it, but first of all, will you allow this to come forward today to be added to the agenda? Sure?
All right. I'll take over from here, Jan. First of all, there's a great conference that FCM takes part in. It's called Great West Sustainability Tour. It runs October 3rd to the 7th, 2016. It's a great conference and something that, frankly, our chair should be really involved in. So I'm going to skip to the whereases unless you want me to read this giant page of paper here, Mr. Shirelli. Therefore, it be resolved that the Planning Committee approve Councillor Jan Harder's attendance at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Go West Sustainability Tour to be held in Vancouver to Seattle between October 3rd to 7th, 2016, to be funded with the training credit from the City Council Administrative Budget and Planning and Growth Management Conference and Travel Funds as described in the motion. And just of note, if you look in the motion, it also makes mention of the fact that Councillor Harder intends on using the full value of her training credit, which we have with her office budget, against this as well.
Thank you. And there's two aspects to this. There's one that's climate control that they're doing. There's some joint sessions, but the other one is brownfields and waterfront developments, and that's the one that I'm going to be signing up for. I haven't been approved. There's only taking 40 people from across Canada, so. But that's why there's an urgency, Councillor Brockington. Okay, do you approve?
Good.
Thank you. Okay, any notices of motion for consideration at subsequent meeting? You can tell that Councillor Leeper is tired because he doesn't have any today. Huh? He mentioned it at the beginning. No, he mentioned it at the beginning. Any inquiries? Other business? Other business? Okay, we're adjourned, and our next meeting is May the 24th. Thank you.